Hello, guys. Today, we're talking about comparing the different methods for solving quadratic equations or functions. Okay, so let's talk about when would be the best for each process. Well, for solving by factoring, that's going to be if equation is factorable. That's a no-brainer, which means that's when you're going to do the product sum box, where you have the A times C and then the B down here, and you're looking for these two. Okay, and remember, it's got to be in standard form. Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c before you can determine if it's factorable. Now, when it's square roots, for solving by square roots, that's if there is no bx term. So for instance, it might look like x squared minus 9 equals 81. That's what it might look like, okay? Completing the square, that is when the A equals 1 and B is even. When the A is equal to 1 and the B is even. And last, the quadratic formula. This is for all other cases. The quadratic formula will always work, but sometimes it's not always the quickest or the easiest way to solve, which you should have determined from the activity before. Okay, so when is it factorable? How would we know really quickly? We can either use this method right here, or somewhat of a faster way is if its discriminant, and remember that's b squared minus 4ac, that is what the discriminant is equal to, is a perfect square. So if the discriminant is a perfect square, then that means it's factorable. Okay, let's look at some examples of what these different types of problems might look like. Okay, so, but first things first is you've always got to get, you're looking at the different things. So when I look at this, I can know right off that my A is equal to 1. The B is even. So since the B is even, I'm going to go with completing the square, because it says if A is 1 and B is even, completing the square is the best method to use. Okay, so that means I'm going to subtract 7, and I have x squared minus 6x equals 66. Now, to find the completing the square, that's where we have to do -6 divided by 2 squared, which is going to give me -3 squared, which is 9. So that means, remember, I add 9 to both sides, which gives me x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 75. Okay, so this right here, that's going to factor out to be x minus 3 squared equals 75. Okay, so now to finish this, I take the square root of each side. So that's going to give me x minus 3 equals the square root of 75. So when I do that, that means that we're going to work this as, well, to solve this in actuality. Remember, when I take the square root of that, I end up with a positive and a negative. So that means I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So I'm going to end up with x equals 3 plus the square root of 75, or x equals 3 minus the square root of 75. So now those answers we need the handy dandy calculator for. So here, put it over here so you can see it better. I'm going to type 3 plus second square root 75, enter, and we're going to round to hundredths. So I'm going to end up with x equals 11.66. I'm going to do second entry, so it rewrites the whole thing, and I'm going to arrow over and change this to minus, enter, and it's also equal to and negative 5.66. So this is my solution. And actually, this belongs in curly brackets. Okay, completing the square is one that's most intense. So we've got that one out of the books, out of the way. All right, let's look at this next one. Okay, well, first off, there's no b term. There's no bx. So that means square root is going to be my option. Okay, so I'm going to add 4, and we end up with 9x squared equals 4. Divide by 9, x squared equals 4/9. I don't do that division because they're perfect squares. Take the square root of each side, and we end up with x equals positive negative 2/3. And that's supposed to be in the curly brackets. Okay, next. Oh, that was fast. Number 3. Okay, so with this one, it just looks ugly all the way around. A lot of times, because it's got that coefficient in front and it's not easily moved around like this one is, I'm thinking this is going to have to be quadratic formula, because the a is not 1, the b is even, but it doesn't look to be easily factorable because it just looks to be messed up. But it doesn't always. Sometimes it's easily factorable. What I can do to determine if it's factorable is I'm going to move the 3 over, because you've got to do that anyway. So subtract 3, because we got to determine if it's factorable, and the way we do that is by using the discriminant. So we end up with 2x squared plus 8x plus 10 equals 0. So now to remember to find the discriminant, it's b squared minus 4ac. And what's nice is that's already inside the quadratic formula if we end up using it, so we'll have already found it. So we have 8 squared minus 4 times 2 times, oh, that's not 10, Kimberly. That is 7. 7. So this is going to be 64 minus 8 times 7, which gives me 64 minus 56, which gives me that the discriminant is 8. This is not a perfect square. Not a perfect square. So it's not factorable. So therefore, I'm doing the quadratic formula. Well, what's nice is I've already found D. So remember our quadratic formula, we're plugging in. So we would have x equals, because it's negative b plus or minus the square root of, now this we already found, because remember, this is our discriminant right here, so we don't only need it that big at this point. 8 all over 2a, so that's 2 times 2. Okay, so I've got -8 plus or minus the square root of 8. Okay, so all over 4. Now, when we go to punch this in the calculator, because that means I'm going to have -8 plus the square root of 8 all over 4, or -8 minus the square root of 8 all over 4. All right, here we go. That means I'm putting all of this in parentheses when I type it into the calculator. Here we go. I have -8 plus second square root 8, close parentheses, or didn't write the parentheses to begin with here. So I'm going to insert parentheses, arrow over. That parentheses doesn't belong inside. That needs to go outside. I'm making all the mistakes that you might make, and that's good. Divided by 4, enter. So we end up with x equals, curly bracket, -1.29, because we have to make sure we're following our rounding rules. And then I have to do second entry, so I can just go back and change this to a minus, enter, and we get -2.71. So there's our solution when it is having to be a quadratic formula. Last one. If I'm looking at, we're going to turn the page real quick, because that one you can kind of easily see is factorable for number 4. So this one would be factorable because 14, that's 2 times 7 equals 9. So you can easily know that's factorable. Let's look over here at number 6. Okay. When I'm looking at number 6, we're checking the discriminant first. So that's going to be 10 squared minus 4 times 10 times -2. So that's 100 minus 40 times -2. So that's 100. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. 100 plus. So with this one, I'm trying to follow the steps of what the answer key has done on this, and it doesn't make sense. So 100 plus, that's 80. That doesn't make sense. I would use a different method for this because it's doing something different in this, and I'm not really understanding what it is. So we'll just scratch this, and you just really what it comes down to for this assignment, guys, choose the method that you see works best for each problem as quickly as you can get it done. There's not a right or wrong true answer for this. It's just these are the best ones to use in these types of situations. Okay, because with this one, you could easily factor this one. I don't see, because you have 10 times -2, so that gives you -20. And then you have 1. Well, that's going to give you 5 and -4. So therefore, we have 10x squared plus 5x minus 4x minus 2 equals 0. You can do the grouping method. So therefore, that's 5x, that's -2. So that means we end up with 5x, and then it's 2x plus 1 minus 2 times 2x plus 1 equals 0. So then we have 2x plus 1 times 5x minus 2 equals 0. And we set each one equal to 0. 2x plus 1 equals 0. So that's going to be subtract 1. 2x equals -1, divide by 2. So x equals -1/2. We also have, not giving myself enough room, 5x minus 2 equals 0. Add 2. 5x equals 2. Divide by 5. X equals 2/5. So our solution is -1/2, comma, 2/5. There you go. Again, it's you choose which method based on the things we talked about is the best method to use for each problem. Have a great day.